Any health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show, by any host, or by any guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before you begin any new diet, exercise, or training program. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to Hospital Warrior, Advocates and Experts, the place to listen for information, ideas, and advice on healthcare advocacy in today's complex medical world. Whether you are the champion for someone you love or want to be your own best advocate, you need facts, guidance, and support. This is the place for you. Now, here's Bonnie Friedman, author of Hospital Warrior, How to Get the Best Care for Your Loved One, and host of the show.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Friedman, host of Advocates and Experts, and as always, I'm delighted to have you with us today. My book, Hospital Warrior, focuses on the needs of hospital patients, but this podcast explores what advocates need and delivers the experts who can help provide it. I'm happy to welcome you, and I hope you'll become part of the conversation on social media. I'm very excited about today's guest, Dr. Theresa Spinello. She's a psychologist who specializes in individual couples and marital therapy. And she is also the proud owner, or perhaps I should say partner, with Biscuit, an almost 9-year-old English Golden. Biscuit sounds like one lovable dog, and I'm a big dog lover. But Biscuit's a working dog, and we're going to talk today with Dr. Spinello about the types of working animals and how they help people individually as well as in professional practice. Dr. Spinello, welcome to Advocates and Experts. I'm so glad to have you with us. To start,
thank you, Bonnie.
Thank you. And to start, just tell us a little bit about your practice before we talk about Biscuit.
Okay. It's a general psychotherapy practice working with adolescents, adults, and families. And I'm working a long time and really enjoy my work. So I'm one of those fortunate people that are happy to go to work every day.
How lovely. And you have a practice in Sarasota, Florida. Is that correct?
I do, and I also have a practice in New York.
Okay. Well, that's a lot of commuting, I might say.
Yes. I do phone work and Skype with my New York patients, and then every other month or so I am up in New York for a week and get to see them face to face. So it's working out really well.
That's wonderful. Now, before we talk about Biscuit and how he came into your life, it's probably very helpful for our listeners to understand the types of working dogs. And I understand there are 3 different types. So might you give us a little introduction here to the types of service animals?
Okay. So a service dog works for the person that they're with, the owner of the dog. They help them with some impairment, usually, that they have. That's the service dog. A therapy dog is a dog with specific kinds of training and temperament that may go into hospitals and visit with patients with their handler. They could go to the library. They can go to schools. And they are the dog that give other people comfort. And the third is emotionally support dogs, and they give comfort mostly to their owner. And I would say their training is more for affection and security.
So Biscuit is a very special dog because Biscuit's trained in more than one of those categories, and I understand that's very unusual.
It is, Connie.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Biscuit, how he came into your life, and what kind of training Biscuit has.
Okay. So in 2010, I decided to move my practice into my home because of the medical condition that was affecting my eyes. And previous, I was working in a suite with 4 other psychologists, and that was a sense of community and friendship. So once I started to work at home, I began to feel a little isolated and had the thought of working with a therapy dog for my patients. So that was my first thought, and I started to explore that and research that and speak to people who train therapy dogs and evaluate therapy dogs. So that was the first step to the process.
And explain, if you would, please, how a therapy dog fits in with the practice of a psychologist.
Yes. Well, lots of research have been done with therapy dogs in that they make people feel safe. They make people feel calm. They lower blood pressure. And they add a different dimension. It's more of a casual, welcoming state, I would say, when someone walks in to my office for the first time.
So if I'm a new client and I'm uncomfortable or anxious and I'm just trying to get my emotions together to talk to you, Biscuit might come over and provide just some loving comfort and support, and maybe that would lower my anxiety and make me relax a little bit. Is that the idea?
Absolutely, and he's very friendly, and when I bring someone in my office, I introduce him as well as myself, of course, and there's a few moments of, oh, what a sweet dog he is, providing people like dogs,
right.
And it breaks the ice. It breaks the ice immediately. People who are afraid of dogs or uncomfortable, he either goes out of the room altogether or he'll sit by my chair and not move.
So he's a very well-trained dog.
He's extraordinarily well-trained, and his temperament, it's not only his training, but his temperament is so tuned into what's happening in the office. So just last week, I had a family with a 6-month-old in a car seat in the office, and his big brother, who was 7, and Mom and Dad, and myself and Biscuit. And he was just delighted, and so were the children, and it was a wonderful thing to see.
And I would gather if things were tense, perhaps in a therapy session, maybe 2 people and they're not communicating well or doing well with one another, that Biscuit could even pick up on that.
Oh, he's very sensitive to that, and I can give a brief example. I had a very angry patient who was getting louder and louder. And Biscuit initially was lying down and very comfortable and quiet. And as she was getting more and more steamed up, he began to sit on his sit-up, and then he stood up, and then he came over and stood behind me, and then came around in front of me, and was really alerting her that something had changed. And she asked me, did I do that? And I was able to say, yes, you did.
Oh,
and
my.
She hadn't
That's pretty
realized,
dramatic, yeah.
It is. She hadn't realized what that does to her family and her children in particular. And I was able to say that. This may be how your children feel when you are yelling and screaming like that. So Biscuit did it without judgment and without words, and it was very, very helpful.
It seems that Biscuit sent a message in a way that another human might not have been able to deliver so effectively. So maybe Biscuit's a good therapist, too.
He is. Yes. And he helps me because I will watch him in my soft gaze at moments and just see how he is reacting and responding to a person, and it gives me information.
Oh, good insight.
It gives me information, yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that's one type of training, and we know Biscuit has been trained for that. But I interrupted you, so please go on and talk about the other types of service dogs. Or, the other types of training that dogs can. We've already,
Yes. So in my process of exploring the therapy dog possibility, I was coming up against my own limitations because of my vision impairment. And two people, and one is one of the evaluators in New York City for therapy dogs. The other one was a trainer who owned an agency in California who did lots of different kinds of training. So in 1 week, both of them said to me, "Have you ever thought of a service dog?" Because there were things they were asking me to do that I couldn't do, and would explain, "No, I have an eye condition, I can't do this." And it was, a picture was forming, something was forming. I was not conscious of that. When they brought it to my attention, I was kind of taken aback because I never saw myself as a person with a disability, although I have one. So that was the second part of the process. And then I asked, can this one dog do both jobs? The trainer in New York said, "I'm not sure." And the one in California said, depending upon the temperament of the dog. So that's really how it began, and Biscuit was trained to help me with vision assistance. And one of the very special things about his training was his first trainer was visually impaired. She was a young woman who had a stroke and lost all peripheral vision, and she was his trainer. So that I find very unusual. And then he had a second trainer, so he's trained to help me with that, and he does a great job.
So you and Biscuit are uniquely suited to each other, it seems.
I think so, Bonnie, and people tell me that. People tell me that our temperaments are similar. We are both on the quiet side, and yes, it works really well.
Now, there's a third type of dog, and one that seems to be becoming more popular these days, the emotional support animals. And let's talk about that a little bit.
Yes, that is a dog that has been a pet, so it has come into the person's life as a pet. And that dog is providing comfort and security, usually to people who have anxiety, some depression, fears, different kinds of things. Also, I have a patient in my practice who has an emotional support dog. He has some cognitive decline from dementia, and this dog just sits on his lap and just stays with him wherever he goes. And it grounds him, and it kind of gives him roots, the gentleman I'm talking about.
Right.
So that's his emotional support dog.
Now, do emotional support dogs get any kind of special training?
They don't, but they do have certain requirements, and they have to have the good citizenship training, which is a dog that is very well behaved and under the control of their person. So if the person is saying sit or lie down or quiet or any of the commands, the dog would listen and obey.
So it has to be a generally well-trained dog, but not a specifically
Exactly.
trained in a working mode like the service or
like
therapy.
a service dog. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And then, of course, Bonnie, we have dogs trained for police work and military work, and social service has trained dogs.
Right, and we've all heard or seen stories about dogs doing amazing work in those very trying and troubling areas sometimes.
Yes.
The emotional support dog has, and maybe other animals. There's been stories in the media about people having birds and other pets too that they feel provide support. And sometimes that's harder for the public to understand what's going on. Is this real? Is this something that's just being made up or even manipulated for some reason? And that takes away, I think, the public trust. So someone says this is an emotional support dog, and you want to ask, well, is it really, or are you just saying that? And can you address that a little bit? Because I think it's a public service announcement, if you will, but a way to help people understand this a little bit better.
Well, it is a problem, and I come across it a lot in the last year, Bonnie, where people have asked me to write a letter saying they need an emotional support dog. They have come into therapy specifically for the letter, and I do not comply. I do not comply with that. There are people who now buy service vests for dogs online.
Oh, my.
And they just put it on their dog. And right here in my own neighborhood, a neighbor did that. She was in her 80s. She had Parkinson's, and she got this dog, put a vest on him, and the dog was not trained. And Biscuit and I would be walking, and this dog would be jumping on her, and I got very frightened for her and actually corrected the dog. That's when you're disciplining the dog. You're doing a correction, and that might be a tug on the leash and a very stern voice, standing up straight, so the dog knows, oh, wait, I'm not in charge here. There's someone else in charge. And unfortunately, the dog jumped on her one too many times, and she fell and broke her arm, and she had to go into assisted living after that surgery. So that is a downside of pretending that you have a service dog and you don't.
And people get those confused, of course, the support dog versus the service dog. But it is important to keep those distinctions in mind. And if you're out and about and you encounter someone who's got a legitimate service animal with them, what kind of credentials, so to speak, would you see so that you know this is really a trained working animal?
Well, you see a vest, and that's absolutely is required. You would see a vest that says service dog, and usually there's something that says do not pet, do not touch. And also for Biscuit and the agency he came from, he has tags, actually, that I put on his leash. and one is the size of, let's say, our driver's license, and another one is smaller. And there it says what he does, his name, my name, what he does, what he's been brought into my life for, and on the back is his picture. So those tags can only belong to him. And then there's another tag that says, in law, it's red and it's big, and it says service dog. So between his vest on and his tags, you see that he has done his work.
Right. Now, would all service animals have something like that, something beyond the vest, which you said can be purchased online? So is there some designation so that people would really know this is a working animal versus a support animal?
Some I have seen and some I haven't. Now, usually the owner of the dog has something that they carry. Like I have something in my wallet that is exactly like Biscuit's tags, only a little bit smaller, so that there's always documentation for a certified therapy dog.
Well, I'm thinking about the average person walking down the street, maybe with their 4 or 5-year-old who loves animals and wants to come over and say hello and pet the dog. How do you recommend people approach a situation like that? How do you start out and make sure that you're going about this in the right way?
Okay. So I have 2 answers for that. For a service dog, no one should be petting that dog while the dog is working. So
okay.
that's like a rule. For Biscuit, because he's also a therapy dog, there are some instances where I will actually take his vest off, and it's usually for young children, like 2, 2.5 children and babies in strollers that are getting so excited to see him. And I will say to him, Biscuit, go down for the baby, and he knows what to do. And they are just delighted. Both the little children and Biscuit are delighted. And I allow that for a moment or 2 so that they both have a good experience. And then I say, thank you for being gentle with him, and I'm going to put his vest on now. And then we go on our way.
So
so I
Biscuit
can
knows.
do that.
Yeah, Biscuit knows when the harness comes off that he's allowed to interact.
Yes, he does. He does. And I will tell him. I will say to him, "Would you like to?" And he knows.
Now, what happens when you're not taking that harness or vest off and people are still coming up and saying, oh, what a cute dog, and they're wanting to fawn and fuss over him, and you haven't given them the clear go-ahead?
Absolutely, Bonnie. I say he's working. Please don't touch him. Biscuit will not pay any attention to them.
And do people...
Even without the harness, if he just has his vest on, he will turn away. He knows he's not to respond.
And we would hope people respect that when you say it clearly and distinctly.
Yes, and then sometimes I have to say it a little more firmly and tell them why. Like, it distracts a dog, and they're doing a job. So that's why you can't pet him now. And usually people will accept that.
And with the emotional support dogs, they just don't have the training, but they're also not being tasked with the same work requirements, correct?
That's right. Absolutely.
Now,
Because I will tell you, Bunny, after 3 or 4 hours in the office, Biscuit is tired.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he takes a break.
And in the office, he's not wearing the harness. So if people want to pet him...
And that's right, because he's in his therapy job, his therapy role, and I am sitting, and my office is set up, so I have no problem as far as visually in my office, and it works out beautiful. So they know that they are allowed to pet him, and he can respond, and he gives paws, and sometimes he will put his head on someone's leg if they are very upset.
So we've spent most of our time talking about Biscuit, and as I said, I'm a dog lover, so I think that's time well spent. But there are there are other animals who can provide either service or support. Can you mention just a little bit about that?
I can, because that's part of my work history as well, Bonnie. I have done some equestrian psychotherapy with patients, and that's the use of horses to help someone resolve and move forward in their life, some emotional problems, mental health issues. So that's very exciting work.
And are there other animals that are used as well, or is it mainly dogs and horses?
That's what I am familiar with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You had mentioned birds. There's a lot of birds in people's homes that they live alone, and it gives them company. There are birds, some birds, as we know, will say words, and it is company for people.
So does that qualify as an emotional support animal?
No.
Okay.
No, I would say not.
There was that famous story of somebody, I think, wanted to take a bird on an airplane, and they were refused.
Exactly. Yes, and people have talked about little pigs and things like that. But at this point, it's mostly dogs that are used for service.
Well, this is eye-opening, and I certainly learned a lot by hearing you explain these distinctions. I hope our listeners learned a lot as well. I'm hoping one of these days I get to meet Biscuit without the harness on, because I want to say hello.
I know he would enjoy that, Bonnie.
Well, I know I would too. And before we close, we want to say if anyone is interested in finding out more about your work, they can Google you directly, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And they would just Google Dr. Theresa Spinello.
And why don't you spell Spinello so everybody can find out?
Yes, it is Spinello, and Theresa is spelt with an H. Theresa.
Terrific. Well, I want to thank you for spending time and sharing your expertise and sharing your love of Biscuit as well. And I want to thank all of our listeners for joining today's conversation about advocates and experts. Until next time, stay healthy, be safe, and please take good care of yourself.
Thank you, Bonnie.
You have been listening to Hospital Warrior, Advocates and Experts, hosted by Bonnie Friedman. You can follow Bonnie on Facebook or Twitter, or contact her with an idea for an upcoming show by going to her website, www.hospitalwarrior.com. Hospital Warrior is all one word. You can also access her podcast there and on the Whole Care Network.